Welcome to another Seeds Astrology video. Thank you so much for joining us. This video is for February 3rd. We're going to be looking at the astrology of the moment, the astrology of the week ahead, and the general themes that we may be feeling in our personal lives and also witnessing collectively. We come from an evolutionary astrology perspective, which utilizes astrology as a self-reflective tool to deeper understand our own nature, to look out of the landscape of the times and weave ourselves deeper into relationality with the moment, to say yes to the evolutionary invitation, whether that's a challenge, whether that's a gift or an opportunity. How can we align ourselves more deeply with life? And that's really what we're hoping to offer through these videos, as just a simple time to reflect on what may be happening in your life, how you may be making sense of this collective moment, and hopefully an invitation to just step more deeply and more confidently into your own process and wherever you might be in that process, and just holding that with a lot of grace and with a lot of love. So thank you so much for joining us. This is exciting times. We have a lot of Aquarius energy, which we'll be talking about and outlining here. But Alia, you want to get us started off and let us know some of the themes we may be working with?
Thank you, Hayden. Sounds good. So in its kind of largest framing, one big piece of what's going on for us is for the last year, but really longer than the last year, we've been really working with a lot of Capricornian themes. And Capricorn rules our government, it rules our sort of structures, it rules the ways that we've internalized those structures, the day-to-day routines and disciplines that we focus on in our life. And we had a lot of major activity and a lot of huge eclipses that happened over 2020 in Capricorn. And they were really helping to show us, oftentimes potentially in challenging and painful and difficult ways, some of the inherent fragility in the structures that we have built our lives upon, both in the external structures of our governmental and political systems, our economic systems, agricultural systems, and also how that shows up in our own internalized belief systems. And so those have been some of the themes that we've been working with. And through that sort of exposure of some of that fragility, we've been invited to really radically reorient and reshift our lives on more solid foundations. Because what happens after Capricorn is that we move into Aquarius. And Aquarius, where a lot of the planets have now moved into, is a truly revolutionary sign. And so we really want to have those solid foundations, really have learned and incorporated the lessons of Capricorn to have a solid foundation on which liberation and revolution can take place.
Exactly. Yeah, and right now, speaking of that, is we have this third quarter moon. So our moon is closing its phase. It's going to be moving into a new moon next week in Aquarius, right? Which will really kickstart. We've been feeling it, but it's going to really kickstart this Aquarian energy to take it to a whole nother level. And that last new moon that we were experiencing was a Capricorn new moon. And this is already, as a lot of planets were moving into Aquarius, but we really saw this and interpreted this as a closure of this major Capricornian season that we've been experiencing collectively. And really the invitation in this new moon cycle that we're still working with right now is, how can we take our lives more seriously, our health, our vitality, our foundations? How can we say yes to the things that we know we need to do, the challenging things that we know we need to do for our lives, the things that we've learned about ourselves over the past few years? How can we incorporate those things, build new solid foundational routines in our lives, approach our lives with more maturity, more clarity, and more structure, in order to allow for this new emergent self that we've been discovering, that we've been exploring and experimenting with, that we've been feeling arising within each of us and within the collective? How can we work with that new self in truly liberatory ways, right? With this Aquarius energy that's coming. And in order to be able to work with that, we need solid foundations. We need to commit to ourselves. We need to commit to solid routines, to things that we've learned over the years that we need to do. So that is this third quarter square is of the moon is an integration of this new moon season, right? So it's time to really incorporate those lessons to continue in that process as we then move towards this new moon in Aquarius, right? Yes. Which really this energy in Aquarius is saying, hey, like we've cultivated a new self, like we've discovered a lot of new things about ourselves. We've let go of a lot of things as well. And it's time to fully say yes to that. It's time to step through the door. It's time to walk out into the world, shining this new self in our relationships, in our lives. And really, like, there is a lot of new potential to come in right now, you know, with Aquarius being expansion and the future and possibilities and liberation. You know, Aquarius is science and objectivity, it's experimentation, it's playful co-creation, it's interconnection. You know, it's ruled by Uranus, which is a really powerful revolutionary planet. And wherever Uranus is in our charts, we usually see where that sort of revolutionary energy lies for us. And so we're in that phase now, and how can we fully say yes to that? How can we bring this new self into these new spaces? How can we realign or reorient to our relationships, to update them, to liberate them, to allow them to explore and experiment with new possibilities of what it is to be alive in these times? How can we connect with new people, new relationships, new communities that see us for our own uniqueness, for our gifts?
And one really supportive energy that we have that just moved into Aquarius, joining many others, is Venus. She's at 2 degrees Aquarius right now, and she's going to be making some conjunctions with other planets who are already there. Venus is the ruler of our deepest values, of our kind of earthly possession. She's connected to the Earth Mother herself and the feminine wisdom herself. She can also be sensuality and beauty and love, the heart. So she carries a lot of feminine, intuitive wisdom, and she's moving through Aquarius now, getting to help bring these questions that you've been asking, Hayden. She's getting to bring a sense of love and this loving curiosity of what does it mean to continue to grow into this new self that I've been cultivating? How can I bring love and joy and beauty to these new relationships, to this new life that I'm growing for myself? And one aspect she's going to be making very soon is making a conjunction with Saturn. And this is a real invitation for us to really bring love to the structures of our life, and vice versa, bring structures to our love, to really help us think about how can I build loving structures that are future oriented, Aquarius, and that serve the collective. They're also making a really cool sextile to Chiron, which is the wounded healer, and sextiles are harmonious. And Chiron is, as this wounded healer, an invitation for how can my pains and my wounds, my traumas, actually serve and alchemize into my gifts and my offerings, my authentic expression. And so that kind of cool dynamic that this conjunction is making can be asking the question of how can I bring loving attention to building structures that support my continued healing? How can I bring love and trust to this healing process that can be consistent, Saturn, that can follow through over time, that can help set me up for a future and help me be a part of a collective future that is truly more beautiful and more life-serving?
Yeah. I really see too with that Venus coming into that conjunction with Saturn is like a maturation of our love. You know, what is it to truly love ourselves? Sometimes we have to commit. Sometimes we have to be a little bit more stern with ourselves. Sometimes we have to see things more objectively and more clearly. With Saturn and Aquarius, can be very meticulous. It can be very self-reflective. It can see the potential pitfalls of the future that we're growing, that the ways that we could be getting in our own way, you know, the ways that we could be lacking commitment, the ways that we could be really not observing the details that are going to come back to harm us in the future. And so when Venus comes into a conjunction with Saturn in Aquarius, it's saying, yeah, like, okay, how can we mature ourselves? How can we bring love to this maturation process so that we can really build a future that's beautiful and vibrant and allowing ourselves to live more fully into ourselves in relationship with others. And so Saturn is offering that, and Saturn in this sextile to Chiron is giving us the courage. You know, Saturn in a harmonious relationship with Chiron, which is the inner wound, in Aries, which is about authentic self-expression, or bringing our authentic selves to the world, is saying, hey, look, it's you can be courageous now. You're held in this process. And Venus there, it's like the divine feminine and the fatherly masculine coming together and saying, from a place of love and self-respect and discipline and confidence and stability, you can take yourself out into the world. You are held in this process, and that process is an internal process, right? It's how can we hold that for ourselves? How can we find the communities and the spaces that can help us in that process as well? Aquarius being a very communal signature. And you know, with Saturn and Venus making this square to Uranus, this can be powerful revolutionary transformation of ourselves, really, of how we approach our lives, of our attachments, of the things that are, of the stories that are keeping us stuck. You know, Uranus rules the personal unconscious. And in Taurus, is our self-identity. Taurus is our attachments. Taurus is our addictions, our habits, our routines in life, our possessions. And so in what ways are we possessing? In what ways are we attached to the unconscious stories? What stories have just played out through our lives for as long as we may have remembered that we just think we are a certain way? That now Venus wants to liberate. Venus wants to come into relationship with and say, hey, no, there's a deeper self-love here that can unravel these stories, that can let go of the past in order to allow ourselves to fully live into this self that we've been so meticulously working to bring through, to birth in this real process that we've been in over the last few years, real pressurizing process to let go of old structures and live into new versions of ourselves. And so Venus is really offering a lot of gifts. It's sort of this last piece of the puzzle to come into this Aquarius signature of like, look, like Aquarius without love can be cold, can be harsh, can be science that is, you know, dissecting life in a way that's disrespectful to some extent. But love in the process is a playful, joyful, co-creative, experimental process. It's a beautiful, divine dance with life itself. And I think having this Venus moving through Aquarius right now is a real gift that we can all step into. It's a real upgrade of our own hearts, of the depths of our love that we're capable of expressing and sharing in our relationships and ultimately to ourselves. And in this process, Venus is going to be making many conjunctions. Saturn is this first one, this sextile to Chiron, offering healing to the wound, this square to Uranus, this moving into a conjunction with Jupiter, right? So there's a lot of potency and power right now, a lot of expansion of the heart, a lot of expansion of love, like, and how we can bring that love and weave that love into ourselves so that ultimately we are harmonizing with the truest sense of who we are, bringing ourselves out into the world, right? With this sextile to Chiron, bringing our authentic nature into the world, ultimately opening up doors to align ourselves with more harmonic relationships, or to upgrade our relationships, to be in harmony with this new sense of self that we're cultivating. So we could see a lot of transformation in our love, in our partnerships, in our relationships, in our communities, and in our life in general, our orientation to life, in our passions and our self-expression. So yeah, like if we can ride this wave and step into this place of self-love, there is so much opportunity and so much healing and transformation that can occur in a relatively short amount of time, because that's how Aquarius works.
Yes, Aquarius is very fast-paced, is very quick, is very excitable, is very full of movement, and everything you're speaking about, Hayden, feels just so much what is being needed and invited in these times. This liberatory love with this square to Uranus, this conjunction with Saturn, the structures and the discipline to follow through on what we know is the work we need to do to unravel these old stories, these stories that may be intergenerational, that may be collective, that are keeping us more limited in our ability to feel truly alive, really inviting us to fall in love with life again in a lot of ways, including the parts of life that are difficult and painful with this harmonious aspect to Chiron. How can the wound, how can the pain, how can the shadow also be loved? How can all parts of our collective experience and our future, kind of our gaze towards the future, also be shining with love? How can we have this Venus energy really give her divine essence and feminine intuitive knowing that all things thrive and blossom and do so much better when they are gifted with the opportunity to be loved and to have the creative love impulse move through them, including the liberatory work that we're trying to plant in the ground with Uranus in Taurus, which is a slow moving sign. How can we help plant the seeds of love that can grow over time, and that this revolutionary energy and liberatory energy can help grow into things that will help serve the future world that we're all dreaming about, envisioning, and wanting to help make a reality.
Yes, very well said. Thank you for that. And this really feels like this sort of preparation for more harmonious alignment, which is some things that we've already been talking about, but just bringing us into deeper relationality with our communities, and maybe even new people, new opportunities for collaboration that feels more right aligned. Really, just looking at the astrology, it looks like there are a lot of doors that want to be open. There's a lot of new opportunities. We could see our lives be changing radically and quickly. And if we align with this energy, if we say yes to this invitation, if we mature our own self-love and willingly offer ourselves to the world and our vulnerabilities and our gifts, that will bring us into relationship with those that see those gifts, love those gifts, and want to nurture and bring forth those gifts more fully. And then we can be in relationship with them in a way that is truly building like an ecocentric collaborative community spaces of true experimentation and collaboration and revolutionary work together. And so there's this Venus theme is really a major theme that we're working with, and it's really a beautiful theme. So much potential healing, so much opportunity for new ways of loving, new capacities of loving that we may have known we are capable of, but we've been maybe watching these old stories play out, keeping us from fully stepping into that. But there's an opening of the heart at this time, a vulnerability at this time, a new opportunity at this time to live our lives in new ways. And there's an opportunity, a really powerful opportunity in this moment to work with our minds, to work with our thoughts, as Mercury is going into retrograde, or has actually for the last few days been in retrograde, and will be moving through its full retrograde cycle, including its shadow until March 13th. Thank you, Alia. And this is a really powerful, beautiful signature in my opinion, and usually Mercury retrograde gets a bad rap. However, that's really only the case when we're attached to our previous conceptions of reality. Mercury retrograde wants to teach us fluidity and flexibility of mind. And that what we thought we previously knew isn't the whole story. There's always more to the equation. There's always more to be seen. This is why Mercury in the mind is very airy and flexible and fluid and adaptive and changing. It moves quickly through the 12 zodiacal signs, and it goes through a lot of retrograde seasons. And the beautiful thing is that Mercury loves to be in Aquarius, because Aquarius is fast-paced, it's revolutionary, it's quick, it's communicative, right? Mercury being the mind and thoughts and communication. It likes this place, with Aquarius being scientific, objective, experimental. The mind can really get lifted into its highest nature in this place. And so it's moving backwards here, right? We've had all this energy come into Aquarius with Mercury here as well. Tons of new insights, lots of opportunity to connect with lots of people in digital spaces, new educational opportunities, new learning, right? So there's been so much information if we just look out at the landscape of our times, and so many different types of information and different people's voices being uplifted and different ideas about different things. And we've been consuming all of that in a really fast pace as the life around us has been changing rapidly. Now Mercury is saying, hold up, wait a minute, we need to reflect. We need to digest all of this information that we've been receiving, all of this new education, all of this communication that we've been having. In what ways are we getting ahead of ourselves? In what ways are we overdoing it? Aquarius being technology, being our communication through technology, emails, Zoom calls, all of the different things that we could be consuming at this moment through the digital space, and the effects that that has on our nervous system, with Aquarius also being overwhelm. Aquarius can be trauma because it can be too much too fast, and a lack of ability to integrate that into our nervous system, into our being in a way that's healthy and aligned. And so with the Mercury retrograde, it's saying, whoa, there's still more we need to understand about this moment, and about how we can collectively build the future together, and about how we can make sense. The sense-making movement right now is just exploding of like, okay, really realizing the underlying incentive landscapes of our culture and of our society that fundamentally makes understanding the nature of reality challenging at this moment of time, because of the amount of disinformation and different types of information, and who to trust and who not to trust, and why trust, and all of those things are involved in this process. And so we really need to slow down. We need to be patient and kind with ourselves. We need to allow ourselves to weigh different types of information, be in different types of conversations. And I see this Mercury retrograde as, how fluid and flexible can we be? How calm and relaxed and unemotional about the different belief structures and possibilities of experience that are coming to us in this moment. Can we just receive them and be with them and digest them and hold them? And so I really think there's a real invitation for the purification of our own thought process, for the purification of our minds, the purification of our communication. And what I just simply mean by that is like the simplification, right? To just come into what is just true, and in that process, really, I think there's an invitation for deep meditation as a real healing gift in this moment. With all the Taurian energy and Uranus and Taurus, that can be meditation. It can be transformation through the meditative slow process.
Yes, and meditation and time in nature, grounding and earthing practices can really be helpful to help regulate the nervous system and soothe the mind in a time when there is so much information, and also a lot of very heated ways of exchanging information, a lot of fracturization, and a lot of political will one way or another in the information that we're metabolizing and processing. So doing what we can to really come back into our own domains and spheres and bodies and that higher witness mind, coming into communion with the earth itself that can help us regulate ourselves, will be really supportive in this time of Mercury retrograde to help us process and make sense of and not get too overwhelmed or have too much mental health crises or trauma response of just too much to take in all at once. And so even though Mercury retrograde often has a negative connotation, we really don't see it that way. From this evolutionary perspective, we really see that it has an invitation, an evolutionary impulse that can be very supportive for us in this time, giving us the chance to pass over what has already been covered and then to actually have a third pass, you know? So we have what's called like a thesis the first time it goes across, an antithesis, making sense of things, maybe reconceptualizing things in a different way, and then that third going direct again and crossing first the same material and then passing over the shadow as a synthesis. And so that way of being able to see it can help us accept and invite this time of slowing down, of reflection, of metabolizing, of self-soothing, and allow our mind to have more of the regulation that it needs to process at the same time that our hearts with the Venus energy is having the invitation to expand and open and deepen. We also are having this invitation for the mind to be able to process and work with and be flexible and be adaptive and be kind of enjoying of the versatility of information that is available to us if we can look and we can see and we can be flexible in what we're taking in.
Exactly.
Yes.
It's like letting the activity of the mind settle, letting the activity of the heart actually expand, letting our love guide us into life, letting our minds settle a little bit. And what I really think there's a powerful invitation for just connection right now. Connection with life, connection with nature, connection with others, connection with ourselves, to digest and process all the transformation that has been occurring in our lives. So just take a moment to reflect. Like, look, the Aquarius energy is here. Change is happening.
Yes.
There's nothing we can do to stop it. It's just flowing in our lives, and our lives are going to be reflecting that. But can our minds actually take the witness place? Can our minds slow down so that we can observe the change around us and we can interact with life in a truly connected, calm, and centered way? And with really with Mercury and Aquarius, you know, that's really scientifically oriented. You know, Aquarius is already scientific, but with the mind now, we're looking at the scientific method itself, you know, our way of communicating and relating to life. And
what we see as fact.
What we see as fact.
What we ground our reality upon itself is being looked at and examined. Yes. Our base assumptions of what it is to be human and how do we make sense of times and everything about what it is to be here now.
Definitely. And so we're in this, we've been in this experiment, right? So we're looking out and trying to make sense of, you know, coronavirus, the vaccine, the political landscape, all of these different things, and there's different opinions about it all. We might have sided in one camp, but, you know, whoa, okay, Mercury wants to go retrograde. We had a hypothesis, and we were running with that hypothesis as if it was true. And now it's like, wait, there's new information that wants to be seen. There's more to this story that wants to be looked at. Mercury in Aquarius wants to be very flexible and look at things from all angles without attachment, because that is how we get to truth. That is how we understand the nature of reality. And when we understand the nature of reality, we can live in a more harmonious way. And it's not about what we personally think is true. Our personal attachments to truth is what gets in the way of us actually living in right alignment with life and actually our lives flourishing. So Mercury wants to say, hey, it's not personal. It's really not personal. If we can step back from that and just say, hey, the real intention here is that we live in a harmonious way within ourselves, within our communities around us, and within nature itself, so that all life can flourish. And if we're making assumptions about reality that fundamentally negatively affect that process and the future generations, we gotta slow down. We gotta slow down before we just implement a bunch of different things that could have lasting and negative effects on the future generation and on our own lives. Let's look at things from just an objective, observant, curious, and loving mind for the sake of life and for our own lives. And so that's what this is inviting. And in these times, yes, that can be difficult because we have so much identity attached into our beliefs, different groups that we're associated with that just believe different things, right? And this is the shadow of Aquarius, can be groupthink and hive mind, right? Can just be like, oh, well, this isn't what my in-group believes, so I need to believe that, because if I don't believe that, I'm not part of the in-group anymore. But look, this Venus is in, and Saturn is in a relationship with Chiron and Aries. Authenticity. Just being authentic with ourselves, just allowing ourselves to open up to all of the information, all the possibilities, for the sake of life and health and just the curiosity of what it is to be alive. And so,
really moving beyond sort of a right, wrong, or a binary thinking of they think that way and we and I think this way, but really trusting sort of the evolutionary impulse of life and consciousness to help reveal more truth, more complexity, more understanding, coming back and finding peace and meaning in the universal laws of nature, being able to settle ourselves in some of these foundational understandings of where we can find meaning and we can find truth, betwixt and between the sides or the polarities or the fracturizations. We can come into some amount of harmony within our own compass point, within our own sense of what it feels like to be in relationship with life as it continues to evolve, what it feels like to be considering and taking into account the collective needs and the future generations as we make the decisions of these modern times.
Thank you. I think that we can probably wrap it up here. I just want to say, like, expect new information, new ways of understanding what is happening. Open up to that invitation, and then you can work with this Mercury retrograde in really beautiful ways that can realign us with life and reorient our minds in a way that can be a real gift. So open up to that. We're going to practice that as well. Open up to new ways of loving, new ways of loving ourselves, new ways of being in loving relationship with others, new ways of offering loving expression to the world itself. Pay attention to our old stories that might be limiting our full loving expression in the world. And can we rewrite those stories? Can we integrate those stories and transcend those stories in new ways that are aligned with this self that we've been cultivating and growing for the past few years and much longer, of course.
And may we feel the excitement and the potency and the momentous occasion of these times, while also helping ourselves regulate and soothe and focus that energy into the domain of our own experience, into the domain of our sovereignty, where we really do have agency, where we can plant the seeds, where we can grow our garden, where we can commune with our friends, where we actually have power and say and control that we can direct in life-giving ways towards the future world that we're growing.
Yes. So thank you so much for joining us. We hope you got some valuable information from this, or had the chance to reflect on your own life in meaningful ways. Write a comment if you have anything to share with us or want to connect to us. And thank you again for being with us in this journey, and we really wish you the best during this time.
Yes, be well. Take care.